Charlie, I'm going to say something that people say privately all the time and not on TV all very often. Something really bad is going to happen. Okay, shit's about to hit the fan in this country. Fox News had to veer away from a lunatic spewing hatred and death threats for Democratic officials in New York because of the migrant caucus. Everyone is on, I don't even know the word. Everyone knows that we're walking into something hideous and no one will do anything. I refuse to believe that nothing can be done. These are people getting their information in part because of the vacuum being created by people with, I don't even know if we call it a spine anymore. That might be an insult to spines. But there are still people out there with followings. He can go out and here's what I want to ask you. When something happens, what do you want to be able to tell your kids and grandkids you did? You good with nothing? You good with, I didn't do anything because I didn't think anyone would listen to me. Trump tweeted something mean about me someday. Because you did something. I tried to do something. Where are all of the Republicans who still have little slivers of a following in the cesspool that is the MAGA base?
Well, look, all of the red lights are blinking about what is about to happen. And I think that's what makes what Jack Smith is doing so important, because he's saying, OK, right now, this is a stress test for the entire criminal justice system. Look, the Republicans are not going to step up. They are not going to raise their hands. We know that Mitch McConnell is not going to come out of his bunker and say what he said after January 6th. But what I think was so powerful about this document, which I've just skimmed, is the way that Jack Smith basically sounds all of those alarms and says, look, this is not just theoretical. Look what he has done in the past. Look what he is doing right now. And I know that the word, gag order is going to be thrown around a lot. But what he's really saying is that Donald Trump needs to be held to the same standard of that any other criminal defendant would be held to, but also to alert the court to the extent of this campaign to discredit and attack and demean judges and jurors and prosecutors, to discredit the entire process. This is not just one trial among any. Donald Trump is not just one defendant among any. This is a former president of the United States who is prepared to call out the furies, who is prepared to stoke violence, to tell people, come, because it will be wild. And, again, with all of these red lights blinking, the silence that we've gotten used to, I think, becomes less defensible, because what happens in 2024 could be horrific. It is likely to be horrific. And all of the people that enabled it and rationalized it and looked the other way ought to be held to account in some way, at least in their conscience, if not politically.
I mean, Glenn, Judge Esther Salas sat at this table where Lisa's sitting and talked about person who wished her harm, who came to her door to kill her. And her son, she believes, protected her and her husband. The rule of law isn't nameless. The rule of law is moms with kids who answer the door. The rule of law is judges who, by no choice of their own, ended up with these cases. And I wonder if you think this is a crisis that has a solution at this point.
A solution? I don't know that I'm willing to go that far. I will say, Nicole, I had almost given up hope that there was a last straw, but finally we've got, I wouldn't call it a gag order, but I've been saying all along we need some narrowly tailored restrictions on Donald Trump's dangerous, inflammatory speech and his posts. And I had almost given up hope that we would ever see a prosecutor step up. Think back a few months to when we saw Donald Trump post a picture of himself with a baseball bat appearing to be mid-swing, and in the adjacent frame, he put a picture, or he retweeted this, a picture of the person who was prosecuting him for felony crimes in New York, crimes that some people may just say, well, it involved falsifying business records. No, it involved falsifying business records to try to steal the 2016 presidential election by burying deeply damaging information about playmates and porn stars. And in the next frame, he has that prosecutor with his hands upraised as if either defending himself or surrendering. And it looks like Donald Trump is about to clock him with a baseball bat. I thought, this is the last straw. But there were so many more straws in the box. Thank goodness we now have Jack Smith stepping up to try to protect people and to try to protect and preserve the integrity of the jury system. Just a few days ago, in Donald Trump's most recent rally, he said, and this is just about a verbatim quote, "Joe Biden ordered me indicted on 91 charges across 4 jurisdictions." That is demonstrably false. And yet, when there is no pushback against those kind of lies, those kind of jury pool poisoning lies, what happens? People tend to believe them because it's like, well, nobody said Joe Biden didn't order him indicted on 91 charges across 4 jurisdictions. So thank goodness we're finally going to, grab this issue by the throat and try to wrestle it to the ground figuratively to protect witnesses and to preserve the integrity of our criminal justice system.
I think, Paul, our best hope is to grab it by the tail, not the throat anymore. On August 4th, Donald Trump truthed this. Quote, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." This is in Jack Smith's filing today. Also in Jack Smith's filing today on page 7. And this is from the examples that Jack Smith writes this. "The defendant has posted repeated inflammatory attacks on the judicial system, the court, and the citizens of the District of Columbia, who comprise the jury pool in this case. Quote, "The defendant has made baseless claims, cited or inserted below, that the justice system is rigged against him, that the court is, quote, a fraud dressed up as a judge in Washington, D.C., who is a radical Obama hack or is biased Trump-hating judge, and that he cannot get a fair trial from the residents of this filthy and crime-ridden district that is over 95% anti-Trump." And then the exhibits show just that in Trump's own words. Quote, "The Obama-appointed judge in the free speech indictment of me by my political opponent, crooked Joe Biden's Department of Injustice, shared professional ties at the law firm, worked for energy company Burisma." Just absolute, what Bill Barr would call bullshit. But this is what's going, not to, friends and family who most crazy people have to rant to, but to millions of his supporters, half a dozen of them who've already tried, as you mentioned, a woman in Texas had a plan to harm Judge Chutkan.
It's about damn time that someone put a gag on him, because it's about our national security. It's about everyone's security in this country, not just political leaders, not just people in this trial. This entire environment in the country is being driven by this guy who is endangering our national security. You say, what if something happened? Something did happen. January 6th happened. They tried to overthrow our government violently. A guy broke into Nancy Pelosi's house and hit her husband with a hammer. There's a conspiracy to kidnap and kill a governor. It's happening all the time, and it's being driven by this irresponsible, aggressive, violent rhetoric coming from someone who used to be the commander-in-chief and being backstopped by people like Mike Flynn, the national security advisor, and it's endangering all of us. So it's about time that someone did it. I told you before, I thought it was going to be the Justice Department or someone like that. It's not going to be the Republicans. It's not going to be the Democrats. These are the guardrails in America hitting. I wish they had been hit sooner, and it's not enough. But finally, someone is taking action to keep America safe, because that's ultimately what this is about.
Nicole, can I add something for a second?
Please.
Because the judge is, the Department of Justice is saying in this filing that the danger isn't just Donald Trump, and the danger isn't just to the participants in the case, including the larger jury pool in Washington, D.C. There's a quote on page 16 where they say a supplemental order that extends some of the prohibitions that apply to defense counsel to the defendant himself is particularly warranted. And then they go on to describe the litany of interviews that John Lauro did on all of the networks, all of the Sunday shows, and say he began a series of lengthy and detailed interviews in which he potentially tainted the jury pool by disseminating information and opinions about the case and a potential witness, and described in detail legal defenses that he plans to mount, including defenses that may never be raised in court or may be rejected by the court before ever reaching the jury. She is saying, Jack Smith's office is saying here that John Lauro is part of the problem. Trump is not just the only problem. And they are also pointing out that the whole Department of Justice and the FBI, they're in danger, too. It goes to what our colleague Ken Delanian reported the other day with the establishment of this threat unit at the FBI to protect FBI and DOJ folks. There's a whole new unit just designed to ensure that those who work in the Bureau and those who work in the Department of Justice are protected against the threats that increasingly face them. They've doubled over the last 6 months, over the previous 12 months, and they are saying those who are involved in the criminal justice system, who read and hear his disparaging and inflammatory messages, may reasonably fear that they could be the next targets. And we know from Judge Salas and others that that's not an illusory threat. That could be very real for people here. And I appreciate that they've made this concrete and have also tried to do something short of just fining him money, but find a solution to trying to tamp down some of the rhetoric that will poison the jury, but more importantly, endanger real people.